Kangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hi there, welcome to the COB. Nice to be here with you on this Monday afternoon, the 17th of November. Look, it has been one of those days. So we did have a bit of a mixed lead-in from the United States, as I'm sure you well know by now. Today, we came out of the gates, lost a lot of ground initially, but a bit of a steady recovery through the afternoon hours. And the COB Australia Index, which has closed, has ended about 1/10% higher, so sitting at 1,657. So look, it was at one point sort of the longest losing streak for this local market since I think it was June. We've got sectors, though, looking quite mixed, and the S&P ASX 200 is up again marginally, so I'll bring you that final figure in just a tick. You know, we saw US futures sort of around the 10:30 mark start to turn positive. We still do have E-minis in the US looking quite solid, so perhaps that helped in terms of sentiment throughout this afternoon. All right. Look, we had a bit of a losing streak happening, although, as we've seen, thankfully, that has, looks like it'll be coming to a bit of an end. 5 days and counting was. Now, let's get to perhaps another factor for lifting this market through the afternoon is we did see iron ore prices rising on hopes of Chinese stimulus. So if you recall, on Friday, we did see a lot of the wind being taken out of the sail of some of the key commodities. Copper, though it was up for the week, was down on Friday, and that was because of data out of China just showing how slow the economy there is. We also had a contraction coming through in Japan in terms of GDP, although it was better than expected. And so we've got stimulus hopes in China, helping to lift that metal that is so important for Australia, mineral I should say. All right, and corporate connection. I've got quite a lot of corporate news to run you through after we check in on these sectors. So the best performing sector being the energy space. So we did see oil prices rising over the weekend on Friday, coming under a little bit of selling pressure here in the Asian region, but did some good things for these stocks listed on your screen, including Ampol, which is up by 3.5% to $31.97. Now, I did mention copper and taking a look at some of these copper exposed names. Look, overall, we do have the materials sector. If we can move on from energy to copper. Oh, looks like we don't have copper. Well, anyways, we did see the material space and slightly into negative territory. The banks painting a little bit more of a mixed picture, and I should flag that Macquarie Group is trading ex-dividend. Also on the banks, I thought it was interesting. Look, a note came across my desk on the big four banks, and of course there's been a lot of consternation as to whether the highs are in for Commonwealth Bank. Most of this year's gains, if not all, have been wiped away. But we've got the banks city. It says the banks will be benefiting from improving macro conditions in FY25. So we'll see. Look, what else are we going to take a look at? Yeah, we'll go to the corporate stories now. Agreed. Okay, so Rio Tinto partnering with Calix to test low-emission steelmaking. We just spoke with the CEO. That'll be up online by the time you're listening to this. Shares in Calix, as you can see, up by close to 40%. Pro Medicus today securing a $44 million 5-year cloud contract. Also, a broker upgrade coming through from Morgan's, I do believe it was. Mesoblast, a bit of a C-suite change. We've got Mr. O'Brien becoming finance chief of the U.S. division. Shares are up by 4%. And Westpac says that it will extend its moratorium on regional bank closures. Perhaps this should have been off the top, but our stock of the day today was Elders. It reported, saw net profit for the year increasing 12% to just over $50 million on higher revenue. And Hyperion X, so that was a story last week, wasn't it? A short seller report coming out. It looked to defend itself, but didn't do much for the share price at all. Fleet partners rose on a remunerator deal and capital payout increase. And in the smaller end, Alcidion shares are up 10% on that Leidos contract extension. Island Pharmaceuticals hitting a record high on regulatory progress as well with the FDA. Tyvan hit a 10-year high on a fluoride project partnership deal. And Orica has lifted. Morgan Stanley has increased its price target on its strong results and what it calls a positive outlook. All right, really pleased to have Henry Jennings here from Markets Today. He's going to be a bit of my savior, I think, right now. Henry, nice to see you.
Nice to see you always.
The air in here, you know?
Yeah, I know.
So look, what do you make of today? Because it was a bit of a funny old session, wasn't it?
It is a bit of a funny old session. It was a pretty quiet day considering all the volatility and all the action that we had last week, you know, down 1.5%, and that that big downdraft across a lot of those high tech and big PE stocks last week. It is kind of I guess maybe we're in the eye of the hurricane at the moment. Of course, Nvidia is the big one later this week, and that's going to really, I guess, dictate a lot of where the US technology market goes. If that does satisfy the bulls. And I guess it's not just about the numbers, it's not just about the commentary, it's about how the market reacts. If it is enough to satisfy the bulls and get that tech rally back underway. So that is going to be the biggie. We've also got a little bit of economic data coming out as well. That is some of the delayed data that we had. We've got the employment numbers coming out on Thursday and real earnings numbers coming out on Friday. And I guess the problem for the Fed, and we've seen a lot of Fed heads over the last week or so auditioning for the Powell's job, I guess, next May, and trying to put their best foot forward and talking about rates and whether they're going to put them down or whether they're going to keep them on hold. The trouble is the Fed's not got a lot of stuff to go on at the moment. If you look at the Atlanta Fed's GDP now number, it's still flashing 4%. And on that basis, you wouldn't be cutting rates. But I suspect that is somewhat outdated and somewhat distorted by the US shutdown. So it is going to be a big week. We are sort of a port in a storm. We're just slightly positive today. And to be honest, it doesn't look too bad. We did fight back from early losses of around sort of 40 or 50 points. And there are a few of the stocks that got hit last week, especially stocks like Drone Shield, which got hit hard last week, 4DX as well, EOS with a new contract there. So there are some good spots here. Also, some of the rare earth stocks are rallying. It appears that deal on rare earths is not quite as done as some had anticipated. We've also got the German Chancellor heading to China to talk about rare earths as well. So there's still stuff bubbling under there, and the gold price didn't collapse too badly. So it doesn't look too bad at the moment, Nadine, but of course it is all about Nvidia on Wednesday.
Yeah, Nvidia on Wednesday. Did you pay any attention at all to some of the news flow here locally? It was a bit of a quiet one to start. But as I mentioned, we had some updates from some of these small caps that are closely watched. And then you had Elders earnings.
Yeah, I guess, Elders is always a tricky one, isn't it? It can be very volatile because of, the weather, etc., and different parts of its business being so diversified. I guess that's a good and a bad thing in some respects, because there's always something that is good, but inevitably when you've got that diversification, there are parts of the business that aren't firing, and it's just a question of whether the parts of the business that aren't firing outweigh the parts of the business that are. But certainly the market did like that. Solid outlook for sheep and cattle prices, and of course it won't do us any harm, of course, if Donald Trump has wound back those tariffs on Australian beef as well. So that's going to help as well. I guess the interesting one was the Hyperion X, that short report from Spruce Capital, which culminated, I guess, in a trading halt on Thursday. Back today, the stock has fought back from the early losses, which were sort of 10% plus. Certainly the company pushing back on many aspects of the 93-page report, and it's interesting to see how the market's dealing with it, but certainly it has dealt with it better, I guess, going forward. And they did point out that Spruce Point Capital had not contacted Hyperionics for any kind of feedback or any kind of comments on that report, so that one's doing okay. Pro Medicus, another market darling, doing okay today. That's another 5-year deal, $44 million deal. They continue to do those deals in the US, which is good news. And one or two other stocks as well around the place. As I say, DroneShield has rallied as well. That shaking off some of that turmoil from last week where the CEO and a couple of other directors sold out. So all up, an interesting day, but I think, really and truly, the really interesting stuff is going to come later this week, and we'll see how we react to that. But we are finding our feet a bit today, and I guess, we were a little bit overdone last week, and some of those big hit stocks are making a bit of a comeback today, which is good to see.
Yeah, well, I'd say DroneShield still has a way to go. It's up by 11%.
It's still a long way to go.
Yeah. Look, you write in our COB newsletter, if you're listening or watching and you don't get that delivered daily, I don't know why. But I had a convo with June Beilu from 10Cap last week, and she's still confident that we will have a Santa Claus rally. You're writing that you're not so sure. Why?
Well, the Santa Claus rally is it's not always before Christmas. Sometimes it is after Christmas. We call it the Santa Claus rally, but frequently it kind of happens after the Christmas break, and we head into the new year with new money, fresh money coming into the US as well, driving and helping our market. And of course, it is thinner in January because a lot of people on holidays. So we may, and we've seen this before with the Santa Claus rallies. We've actually seen, I remember writing a few years ago, I can't remember which year, but quoting Alan Rickman in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with our good friend Russell Crowe. Christmas is cancelled, and it looked horrible at one stage for Christmas, and then as we headed into and after Christmas, the market did pick up and it did deliver. So, fingers crossed that we will get a Santa rally, but there's a lot of water to go under the bridge. We've got, the Federal Reserve meeting, which I guess is the most important thing. And I did write on Saturday, how fragile the market has become if the whole of the premise of the bull market is a 25 basis point cut from the Fed. We know the Fed is ultimately going to cut. It's just a question of when, and Powell will be out in May, and whoever takes his place will be cutting from, far more aggressively, I suspect, and trying to imprint his will on the board. So, the direction is down. It's just a question of when. But let's hope Santa does turn up. We're only 5 weeks away, which seems crazy, doesn't it? I'm not sure where this year's gone, but it did seem unlikely last week. We may get it if Nvidia's good. Who knows? But I suspect it'll be more January than Christmas.
Okay. Look, Henry, thanks for joining us on this Monday. Nice to chat with you to start the week. I'll see you soon.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Nadine.
Henry Jennings there from Marcus Today. And yes, you can sign up for the AusBiz newsletter at ausbiz.co/newsletter. Okay, let's get to our stock of the day. I had the pleasure of being joined by David Lane from Ord Minnett and Andrew Coleman from Team Invest. So here's what they had to say about Elders.
Elders as a whole, return on equity and return on capital a little under 10%, which is why I'm not particularly excited about it. Earnings recovering now back towards that sort of long-term growth trend that it's had. Reasonable stability, though some exposure, of course, to weather and other items. 87% debt's higher than I'd like, but not too scary. I'm going to say it's a hold purely because there's too many of our filters that mean it doesn't fit within our bucket of the best companies to look at. But having said that, I don't think you would lose your shirt if you're in Elders, and overall it's still a wonderful company. It's just not in the top 20 in my opinion.
The management seem to be excited by their strategic acquisition of Delta Agribusiness and are looking at further enhancements to their systems. So, I think the market was excited by the fact that as well as having a good result, management are also looking forward to a positive year. But like Andrew, I think that at current levels, they're not compelling value. So I think if you've got it in the portfolio, I'd be holding them. Can't see a reason to be buying them at this stage.
All right, let's take a look at what we are expecting tonight. Oh, actually, some of the leaders and laggards. I'm all confused. Here is DroneShield up by 11%, the aforementioned $2.59. Elders, good result, reaction to the results, I should say. Aluka Resources up by 6%, Linus and Domino's amongst the leaders. Now, some of those that weighed on the market, there's Hyperion X, Regis, Volt, Newmont, New Hope, we did see gold and copper retreating, and that's why you're seeing a bit of that damage on your screen there. In the small cap world, Calix, if you'd like to listen to that interview, it's up online, putting on close to 40%. Island Pharma, I just mentioned, some good progress with the FDA. And flipping the page, let's see what was weighing on the market. Karma, that new listing, off by close to 10% to $2.01. Finder, as well as Kingston Resources, Silver Mines, and Nirada. Okay, now we can look at what's happening tonight. Not much. The U.S. Empire Manufacturing Index for November expected to slip. And tomorrow we get meeting minutes from the RBA here, so it'll be interesting to see where the talk was focused. We do get earnings. ALS, Catapult Group, and TechnologyOne. We'll be speaking with TechnologyOne's CEO as well as Catapult as well. And in terms of AGMs, BlueScope, Northern Star, and Paladin. So it looks like it'll be a pretty busy morning. We, of course, look forward to seeing you in the morning when we can digest the overnight session and take you through what to expect during the day. We're on air from 9:45. Look, as I mentioned, it was a positive finish for the CIBO Australia Index, closed up by about 0.1%. A extremely flat finish for the S&P ASX 200, putting on, oh geez, what is that? It's put on like a point or something, 0.02% to 8,636. What we can say is we ended with green on the screen, although a really line ball call. Look, it's been a pleasure to be here with you today. You can catch up with any of the interviews that we've done throughout the day you may have missed online at ausbiz.com.au. And as always, we look forward to seeing you at 9:45 tomorrow.